The uniform may come off, but the mission doesn't end. And this month on DogTags Ownership, that message showed up in 3 completely different ways. We talked about building a personal brand. We talked about using your voice to grow your business. And we talked with 2 entrepreneurs who have built one of the most recognizable veteran franchise brands in America. But August is also about where DogTags Ownership is going next, because today we're excited to officially announce a partnership that brings our mission full circle.
This is the August recap of DogTags Ownership. And if you believe veterans shouldn't have to build their next chapter alone, this episode is for you.
From dog tags to ownership, heroes take the lead. Stories of veterans building dreams with passion, drive, and speed. From service to success, we're here to inspire the quest. Dog tags to ownership, we're the best. Take the prize.
Welcome back to Dog Tags to Ownership, the podcast where we share the stories, lessons, failures, wins, and resources, helping members of the military community turn their dog tags into ownership.
August has been a pretty incredible month, hasn't it, Julie?
Has, Matt. What did you do?
What did you do in August? I guess my crowning achievement, besides not helping you grow Forces Brands USA or contribute in meaningful ways to the podcast, was I wrapped up the renovation of one of our investment properties in Kansas City, Kansas. And we were able to get that on the market this month after what felt like almost a year of renovation post a fire that we had at the property. We're kind of excited to list that. We're typically long-term buy and hold investors, but we are going to sell that. I've heard different real estate investors refer to it as like pruning properties. It's not in the greatest neighborhood, but it's a great property and it's basically brand new at this point. But we're going to take the proceeds from that and we are going to build a short-term rental at Lake of the Ozarks. So we're super excited about that, which came from a relationship with my lender at the bank, which has turned into a bit of a friendship. So super excited. That'll be our first short-term rental to add to our portfolio and also serve as a vacation home. So when, the Austins come to visit, we can pile into the car and take a trip down to the lake. So we expect that to be actually finished early 2027. So we can hit the big short-term rental season there next spring, summer, fall. So very excited about that. And I guess the other big thing is our daughter starting kindergarten. Actually today, she started at her new school with lots of her friends from the neighborhood. And we have a kindergartner now. Times are changing. What do you got going on, Julie?
Man, you did. You had a lot this month, Matt. You did most of your podcasting from the property. So I got to see the evolution of all of your stuff and what you're doing. I will say you're very handy. The property looks great. Looks really good. Probably too nice for the neighborhood, but that's a different story because you have very nice taste and do very good work. The month of August for the Austins, I'm trying to think. It's always busy in our house. We went on vacation, just got back from vacation, which was great. We were able to go to the beach, spend some time with my dad as my mom got to go on vacation, and then go down to Hatteras where we have some land. So we got to look at the land there, figure out what we're going to do with that. So also looking at, I think we'll probably build hopefully in the next year, I'd say, because I got to put like a septic and some other stuff in to be able to do that. So get it ready to be able to build another short-term rental for us down there. So that was a great vacation that we had. Let me think, getting out of the house. So I was able to go out to Eat Your Feelings to go see Corey and Sam out at the Warriors Retreat out at Bull Run for their live filming event that they just wrapped up for season 3. So looking forward to seeing those episodes come out and just get to interact with them and see them doing their podcast, which was really cool. And then also meet some other folks while I was out there. Really busy month always, and really trying to get more people to come on Forces Brands USA, the platform. I was on a bunch of podcasts. That's what I did this month. I was on a ton of podcasts this month talking about Forces Brands USA and what we're doing and what we're building and how we are trying to amplify the members of our community and what they are building with their businesses. So
you took a cue from Interview Valet, right?
did.
Yeah, getting out on other podcasts to shout about Forces brands.
Yeah, I guess I did. And I didn't really mean to. Some people connected with me and were like, hey, you should go on these podcasts. One big thing that came out of it is DogTags ownership is now on Reese Across America Radio. Our episode encores every Thursday morning at 7 a.m. So that's pretty cool to work with Reese Across America Radio, which you can find on reachacrossamerica.org and stream it live from there. And our episode encores every Thursday morning at 07. Another cool podcast that is on Forces Brands USA on Reese Across America Radio is Oscar Mike Radio. Travis is also on there as well. And then also Tactical Treasures with Tracy Flanagan. So some great podcasts that encore on Reese Across America Radio. But it is a 24/7 internet streaming radio station where you can hear stories from our military community. So really excited that we are on Reese Across America Radio now, and we are going to partner with them as well here in the near future for Reese Across America when they do that, because the trucks do leave from an area right by my house. So I'm going to go over there when that happens and talk with them. So just great partnerships. And like you said, Matt, I took a playbook out of the Interview Valet Tom Schwab. So I guess that then gets us into, let's recap. We had 3 incredible conversations, 3 completely different entrepreneurial journeys, and now a partnership that gives us another opportunity to turn the conversations happening on the podcast into actual opportunities for veterans. But before we get to that big announcement, let's rewind and talk about the people who joined us this month. First, we had Season 2, Episode 31 with Malyri Ryan, the founder of Cheap Chic Finds. We had Season 2, Episode 32 with Tom Schwab, the founder and CEO of Interview Valet. And finally, Season 2, Episode 33 with Jerry and Tracy Flanagan, the founders of the JDog brands. So Matt, let's get into it. Let's start with Malyri.
Yeah, that episode, that conversation, just such a great reminder that entrepreneurship doesn't always have to fit into the traditional mold. Malyri really started her entrepreneurial journey through the creation really of like a social media site. It was helping other parents find ways to look fashionable without spending a ton of money. And it's just such a relatable topic, I think, for so many families out there with a lot of the belt tightening and budget tightening that's going on currently. Families are feeling the financial strain perhaps now more than ever. So her episode really did resonate. And there's a reason why she had such profound growth in the social media realm. It's because she was super relatable to especially moms out there, but parents in general, finding ways to, again, look good on a budget and really creating some bonding experiences. Incredible how she started from that and where her business has grown today.
Yeah, and I think one of the really cool things too is, like you mentioned, it started as a blog where she was posting on her blog and just talking about Cheap Chic Finds, and she came up with the name. It popped in her head when I think she said she was out by the pool or something, and at that moment she was like, this is a great idea. Went and secured all the websites, the social media handles, everything, built her website, built her social media following, and has really grown that over time. She talked a lot about doing something that you enjoy and then something that you're passionate about, but then also the roller coaster with that, and how at some point it was not fun anymore, and trying to continue to push through and do it, I think was really vulnerable for her to talk about on her podcast, because you see what's on social media a lot and you see what she's doing, but there's also behind the door on social media and how it's not always great. She had to post something, but now she has a kid and she wants to spend more time with her son and do those things. And does it really matter that she found this thing at Walmart that's going to go away next season, but how can she spend more time with her family and do that? So really trying to find that balance as well and continue to do something that she is really passionate about and enjoys, because at the end of the day, like, that's why she created that, is because it was something for herself to enjoy.
I think she had that moment of reflection on our podcast where she acknowledges she's a lot deeper than just saying go out and spend money at Walmart, like the whole pushing the marketing piece of it and excessive spending. We acknowledge, I think, that we have such a privilege to live where we live and do the things we're able to do. But again, it's not all about just like go to Walmart and spend a bunch of money. So I think she acknowledges that, like you said, the challenge of being an influencer and her content, like where it started, where she's grown to. She is yet another example of someone who, like you said, Julie, just sat at the pool one day and created her website from scratch. And she said, looking back on it, it was probably not the greatest website, but she took action, right? And she worked through it. And another success story of taking action. You're going to stumble. There's going to be setbacks. It's not going to be perfect at first, but you can grow and move the effort forward.
Yeah, 100%. Malyri brings so much to the table in what she's doing and how she's built something. Really enjoyed Malyri being on the podcast.
Absolutely.
We'll go to our next episode, season 2, episode 32, with Tom Schwab. Tom is the founder and CEO of Interview Valet. So, Matt, thoughts?
Yeah, so we went from fashion and content creation to something every entrepreneur needs to understand, which is getting people to actually know you exist. And Tom has found essentially what was maybe a niche area a decade or so ago. Aspiring entrepreneurs, business people, self-employed authors, you name it, out there through podcasting. So trying to find where they might fit best with certain audiences and create that content and that following.
I think it's really awesome what he's doing and how he does that, because he's also passionate about, as they bring clients on, that he understands their story. They kind of go through who they are going to bring on, who they're going to help, who they're going to put in front of the podcast that they partner with or find the podcast, and make sure that the person is really ready to go out and tell their story. And I think we can call ourselves podcasters now. I think that's super helpful sometimes, is when the person knows what they're going to talk about when they come on to a podcast to discuss their brand or their business, whatever it may be. Tom talked about one word that really stood out to me is just being patient with your business, being patient with your brand. It's not going to be an overnight success because you have to build trust as you're doing it along the way. And that's what Tom helps the people that he works with through Interview Valet, is build that trust with the consumer, with the market, to know that, hey, they have a great business, they have a great brand, and he only works with those right people and gets them in the right room. Tom's been doing podcasting for a very long time. He's been an entrepreneur. He understands the market. He understands what needs to be done, but then he also understands how you have to pivot based off of how things are going. So just a great episode, and really enjoyed talking with Tom and what he has built with Interview Valet.
Yeah, when you talked about being patient, I mean, that's been indicative of so many of the entrepreneurs, veterans, business owners that we've spoken with between last season and this, right? I don't know that we've had one that says I did very little work and I was an overnight success story. You know, I went viral. I mean, granted, we've had some people that have had that we'll call it 15 seconds maybe of viral time on the internet, but they had to continue rowing just as hard or harder after that moment. So being patient, letting things grow, letting them grow organically. And also, I think Tom mentioned trying to take some time to savor the wins too, right? To look back, pause for a second, say, look at where we've come from where we were. Look at where we came when we were sitting in your basement for the first episode and we're at today. And just like Tom, he's so polished at this point, right, in the podcast forum. And what an easy interview. And he dropped so many gems and just lots of good recommendations and knowledge from someone who's got a vast amount of experience in growing and helping business owners and entrepreneurs.
And then that brings us to our last August episode, season 2, episode 33, with Team JDog Flanagan. So Jerry JDog and Tracy, Mrs. JDog Flanagan, who are the CEOs of the JDog brands. Jerry JDog was almost a serial entrepreneur at one point, and really talks about his failures in entrepreneurship and how everybody's going to have failures when they go through the journey of being an entrepreneur. So I think it was just great to sit down with him Their brand is one of the only, if not the only, veteran-focused franchising model that's out there today. And their journey or their mission is to really help our community get into entrepreneurship through their franchises and really help our veterans that are out there. So I'll turn it over to you, Matt, for your thoughts.
Just a powerful couple. Jerry, kind of the idea guy. And like you mentioned, several businesses before getting into junk hauling, which was really just kind of a side gig when he was a single parent there for a little while. Something to earn a little bit of extra money on the side became this nationally recognized business. I think they've got 88 franchises across the United States now. So just massive growth in a relatively short period of time. Jerry, who had the idea as far as the junk hauling piece, but wanting to turn it into a business. And then the franchise idea actually came from Tracy. But one of the things they mentioned briefly on the episode, which I don't want to gloss over, is their partnership with another company that assists them with growing, probably incorporating the systems and process and assisting with the franchise model and getting it out there. We didn't spend a whole lot of time talking about this other partnership that they've had to grow the business, but it goes back to not doing things by yourself, that you could be more successful with a team, building the team around you. Something that we rarely, if ever, hear from folks on the podcast are like, I did this all by myself and look at where I've gotten today. It's typically I've created or assembled an amazing team around me, or I've gone out and found people to partner with.
Yeah, 100%. In that episode, you can hear their journey, really the entrepreneurial journey and how they got there, but then also hear about how they market as well. And one of the things they did, they had a TV show. They did one season on a TV show, and from that, it didn't get picked up for the second season, but they said it was a lot of fun. But what came from that is Tracy now has a podcast. It's called Tactical Treasures Podcast, and last week was her 200th episode, which for all podcasters out there, know that's not an easy number to get to or a milestone. It's difficult. They say most podcasters stop between 8 and 14. For her to continue on to 200 episodes in which she drops one every week is amazing. And the big thing from her podcast is she asks everybody, what is their tactical treasure? And so it's just a little nugget that has helped you through your journey or whatever you're doing. So check out Tactical Treasures Podcast. I was her 200th guest.
What was your tactical treasure?
Grace. To give yourself and others grace. One word. That is my tactical treasure. That's what I try to do every day with myself and with others, like you today, Matt. Try to give you grace because you said anytime after 9, your time. Here it was.
I think it was technically a time.
It was 45 minutes later. I text
Just
you.
after 9.
You don't answer. I try to call you. You didn't answer. Finally, here we are. So I gave you grace. I said he's doing something. Dana probably put him to work and had him doing something. So
first day of school activities, you know?
Yeah.
Had to kick off the school year proper.
Yeah. So gotta give each other grace. But no, that was my tactical treasure, as really, because I've been trying to work on it with myself and with others every day. And so I think that that's a quality that we all probably need to work more on every day. But it was a lot of fun. Tracy is great. And she's really, I think, the marketing person behind the JDog brands and really pushing what they're doing through her podcast, but also the idea of the franchise. And like you said, Matt, they partner with people. So congratulations to her on 200 episodes. But that wraps up our 3 episodes for the month of August, and really think they all had common thread. Malyri reminded us to own who you are. Tom reminded us that our voice and our story can open doors, and Jerry and Tracy showed us what can happen when ownership becomes bigger than one person. So then that brings us to what we got coming up in the month of September. But before we get to September, DogTags Connect this Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern, Google Meet. I'll post the link on all of our social media platforms. Join us. It's a great opportunity. No slides, no agenda, just to talk about entrepreneurship, whether you're thinking about starting a business, you've already started a business, or you're just looking for ideas out there. Join us this Thursday for DogTags Connect, 8 p.m. Eastern. Getting into September, though, we have some really big things coming up. We partnered with Veteran Social Summit 2026. That is a online virtual summit, 9 and 10 September with Vet Social. I did all of the one-on-one interviews for all of the speakers that are going to be on there, and they've been posting on social media, and we've been sharing them as well. But it is a great event. Give a big shout out here to Ryan Hunt. Ryan has really started Vet Social. It is an amazing online community platform for our community to come together and just share experiences or things that are going on with you or with other folks. But the big summit is 9 to 10 September. It's all online. It's all free. You can go to Veteran Social to sign up for that. I'll also have it in the show notes here for you to sign up for that free event. I am a speaker at the event, so please come listen to what I'm going to be talking about, which is always turning your dog tags into ownership. And then the next big event, if you are outside the Philadelphia area, Saturday, 12 September is Vet Fest. It is a big event that is for the military community. There will be military, veteran, military connected brands out there. I'll be out there doing some media for them and also just getting around and talking to folks and trying to figure out how we can help our community really continue to turn their dog tags into ownership at that event. So if you're going to be there and it's right outside the Philadelphia area, look up Vet Fest. If you see me, I'll be there walking around probably with a camera. Come and say hi. I'd love to talk to you and learn a little bit about you and your story and how we can help promote you and amplify your message. Then our really big event for September is down in Tampa, Florida. The event where Mike and team at the Craft team will be having an event down in Tampa, Florida from 22 to 24 September. I believe 22 September is the media day where DogTags Ownership podcast is one of the 4 main podcasts that will be there interviewing all of the brands that will be there for this big event. And then on the 23rd, we're going to the Tampa airport as part of Forces Brands USA with Craft to talk to all of the vendors at the Tampa airport to get veteran brands into the Tampa airport to show the American people why they should replace one product, service, or podcast with one from someone who stood up and raised their right hand to serve our country. So really looking forward to that. And then to cap that event off is the night of the 24th, which will be in the show notes. You can get your tickets, is the Craft Frontline Tasting where Matt will be joining me and we will be there with DogTags Ownership, but with also Forces Brands USA, highlighting all of the amazing non-alcoholic and products, services, and podcasts that we have on Forces Brands USA. So come out to that event. It's going to be great. If you're in the Florida area, Craft, it has a number of amazing veteran-owned, military-owned beers and spirits that will be there that you get to talk to the founders behind them, hear their story, why they started their businesses, and then get to taste some amazing products. So come out. That's at the Tampa Downtown Marriott right there on the 24th. And like I said, those tickets will be in the show notes. And then the last thing, while we're in Tampa, we are going to be attending the Team Addo Welcome Social for their big fundraising event that happens on that Saturday, the 26th, which is their fishing tournament. Team Addo helps military members who are transitioning out of the military figure out what they're going to do next. So great nonprofit organization that really support in what they're doing because they are helping our service members owning your life after service. And that's what Team Addo does. So come and see us at some of those events. We will be out and about seeing everyone. And then we have a big announcement for this month, and it is our official partnership with Owners in Honor. Matt and I are really excited about this partnership because from the very beginning, when we started this podcast, it was all about how do we help those within our community turn their dog tags into ownership. And this podcast was never just about a podcast. It was how do we help others? We wanted this to be a platform to help others and to help veterans get into entrepreneurship. And we were able to meet Patrick Flood last year. He was on the podcast and talk with him and some of his team at Owners in Honor. And now here we are a year later, and we are officially partnering with Owners in Honor, and we are incredibly proud to announce that partnership and the resources that Owners in Honor bring to our community. And if you don't know what Owners in Honor is, it is a nonprofit that helps you in entrepreneurship through acquisition. They also help on the back end, though, veterans who already own a business and are looking to sell that business. They provide education, they provide connections, opportunities, and then they also can help you to access to capital. All right, so we are really excited for that partnership with Owners in Honor. And because of that, we brought Patrick Flood to come on to the podcast to talk a little bit about Owners in Honor and what Owners in Honor is doing. And you can catch that interview right now. To help us officially announce our partnership with Owners in Honor, who better to be on the podcast again for the third time, but Patrick Flood, the CEO of Owners in Honor. Patrick, welcome back to DogTags the Ownership. How are you doing?
Thanks for having me back again.
You are a three-peat for us because of what Owners in Honor is doing for our military community and what we believe is so impactful and so important for those military members. But first, can you just give our listeners and followers who might not have heard you before a quick overview of what Owners in Honor is and what problem you're trying to solve for veterans?
We're a veteran-led, veteran-founded nonprofit that was founded in 2023 for the purpose of educating veterans and military families and service members about entrepreneurship through acquisition, which is, in simple terms, buying and selling businesses. Since our inception, the first year, just like any other startup, it was a little slow going. Mostly it was establishing our credibility within the marketplace and being able to talk to people. But beginning really year two, which is in 2025, we've assisted veterans in 11 acquisitions. We have about 3 or 4 businesses that have come to us post-acquisition for some sort of advisory support. And we've educated at this point upwards of 3,000 veterans and military families in both in-person events and also some of our webinars, which is why the podcast is so important. And then we've had, right now we have being currently educated about 500 veterans and military family members.
That's fantastic. Because I think when we talked to you last year, Patrick, you were working on the first person to acquire a business, purchase a business through acquisition. Patrick, why would someone, a veteran, someone that's currently serving, why wouldn't they pursue just going out and starting their own company? Why entrepreneurship through acquisition?
I think it's 2 different questions that you're asking, and I'm going to try to separate them into the 2. The first question, why acquisition versus startup? That's one. And so either pathway, I think, is a credible pathway for veteran ownership, which is really what I would like to change the conversation into. I'm actually part of a group of people that would like to change the conversation instead of veteran entrepreneurship, which is really sort of the action of being an entrepreneur, but to actually the desired end state, which is how military folks typically talk, which is veteran ownership. Because veteran ownership implies that you have ownership and purchase over something, and that therefore there's some sort of credible value to it. And ideally, you're going to be able to exit it well and create some sort of family or generational wealth. Back to your question, it's that the likelihood of a positive outcome without having a blue ocean idea of creating a new company, surveying the marketplace, identifying customers, et cetera, being able to identify an existing company that is a good fit, and then measuring our leadership skills that are developed through the military, and then being able to apply those, which, by the way, those leadership skills are something that no business school could possibly teach. And it's really our biggest differentiator in the market. There are so many businesses that are veteran owned right now that are going to be exiting just like all the other businesses in the next 5 to 10 years. And so if you take the average composition of those exits, it's going to be about 10% of the exits, even though currently right now, veteran business ownership of small businesses is about 4%. The variance tends to lean toward the older businesses. So there's more than 10% that are actually going to be exiting in the next 5 to say 10 years. And of those businesses, many of which rely on veteran-owned business certifications, 8A certifications, service-disabled veteran-owned certifications, and the transferability of those credentials is really important for them to maintain enterprise value. So we want to be able to make sure that veterans are understanding that there's a viable marketplace. And what's unique about it is it's a marketplace that's really only suited to them because of the transferability of the credentialing. And so that's the first part. The second part is why ask for help? The obvious answer to that is I think we all do a little bit better with a little bit of education and instruction and coaching when we try to do stuff, but we talk about it more in the sense of, and not everybody in the military has had the opportunity to jump out of a perfectly good airplane, but those of us who have realized that it's a very dangerous prospect and that the likelihood of a catastrophic outcome is extraordinarily high unless you provide risk mitigating factors. Those risk mitigating factors are, one, learning how to jump out of an aircraft and land. Number two is then having someone act as a safety or a jump master to be able to make sure that the equipment is ready. Three, the load master of the aircraft itself. Four, the pilots. And all of those things are intended not to reduce or not to eliminate the risk of trying to defy gravity with a piece of silk. It's actually to try to reduce the likelihood of a catastrophic outcome. So for us, it's that, could you hypothetically strap on a parachute and jump out of the airplane? Absolutely. And probably better than 50% of the time, you're going to be fine. Our goal right now is that unassisted acquisitions are only successful about 30% of the time. And so our goal is to try to eliminate that 70% buffer of poor acquisitions or unsuccessful acquisition. And that's the acquisition. That's not even the searches. Of searches, there's 90% of them are unsuccessful. So for us, we want to really try to reduce those outcomes to something that's much more manageable. So it's something that you can benefit from working with an institution such as Owners and Honor because we have institutional knowledge and institutional connections that we are learning things in an aggregate versus learning things at a single instance and then having to then iterate every single time. And so for us, it's really no different than I didn't learn how to jump out of an airplane or be a jump master from someone who had never done it before. I learned it from someone who is a master parachutist. And so they had done it lots more times than me. And so from that, being able to then use that knowledge that we're gaining because we're aggregating the knowledge to then be able to mitigate risk as much as possible.
I know you've touched on, a number of areas that a veteran can prepare themselves better for transitioning from the military into veteran ownership. What would you tell a veteran today that's listening to this podcast? What advice would you give them if they were in that initial phase of, I want to own something, I want to create generational wealth, or I want to have an impact on my community, and I want to do all this through ownership or business ownership? What advice would you give them?
Yeah, so the one truly large gap is in exit planning. I would say that in the last couple of expeditions that the United States military went on, we didn't do exceptional in our exit planning. But everyone from the very beginning understands that it's a basic principle of planning is understanding what is the end state, what's the desired end state. And I would submit, because there isn't a part of our transition program that talks about certified financial planning is that there's a lot of, I think, misunderstanding about what it is that you're trying to do, want to do anything afterwards. Like myself would be a great example. So when I was transitioning out of military, I'd gone to business school. I was a battalion commander. I was a lieutenant colonel. I had 2 master's degrees. I was pretty marketable as a W-2 employee and got success being able to do that. I don't think I had the right risk tolerance at that point to start my own business. I definitely didn't have enough capital in the bank. I didn't understand how much I would need as a down payment. I didn't understand how to utilize my TSP to potentially help me buy a business. I didn't understand any of it. And the thing that I also hadn't really considered at the time is, how long do I really want to work? And how much wealth do I want to accrue realistically? And usually those conversations are had over the kitchen table, ideally with a spouse, which is incredibly important, and your family. And then the second part is to be able to talk about it with a certified financial planner and to be able to say, hey, this is kind of what my aspiration is. Is this conceivable? Because I think for business acquisition specifically, there's a lot of people who have and a lot of it is because the initial push toward business acquisition came out of big search funds. And so they were looking for larger acquisitions. So the tendency, because they had to pay shareholders too. So when you're looking at what has mostly been discussed, it's usually something quite large that might be, it provides a massive amount of money to the owner, but at the same time has an incredible high risk because you're going into something completely new. You don't know anyone. You've never done it before, and you're potentially having multiple millions of dollars worth of risk. Understanding what your personal goals are financially and what your personal goals are for retirement is really important for you to then understand, do I need to buy a $5 million business and max out my SBA 7A loan? Or could I purchase a $500,000 business and have much less risk exposure and still be able to meet my financial goals because I can grow that business? Am I better suited for a franchise or am I better suited for an independent business? Am I better suited to work at a private equity firm and maybe rotate through a deal team, a search team, and an operations team, and then potentially be an operator first? What is my actual pathway to be able to do this? And it's a lot like the conversation for startup entrepreneurship has always been, is that, do you have an interesting idea and what problem do you think you're going to solve in the marketplace? So very similar to that is that's a maxim that just is what it is. And so it's always true. And I would say in business acquisition, it's always true that you have to understand the end state. What's your desired end state? The biggest reason I would submit that most of those businesses are transacting poorly when they go to exit is because that was never considered. It was, they either inherited the business, bought into a business, and it was conceived of as a job. And there's really nothing wrong with that because the most important thing is to be able to pay bills and put food on your table for your family. But a lot of times people are losing the understanding that what they're building is really a valuable asset that then could be sold to somebody based on goodwill, your customer base, your recurring revenue, and different things that you take just as kind of form of factor because that's the thing you've been doing for a long time. But really, it's a huge deal for somebody else and there's value to it. There's a great example. I was talking to somebody who was at a startup entrepreneur event and he was starting a new company and we had asked him, what did you do before? And he was like, I ran a landscaping business. Oh, it's interesting. How long did you run that? About 10 years. Really, what was your recurring revenue? It was pretty significant. And what was your overhead? It was pretty low. And what did you do with it? He goes, I just sold all the equipment. And I was like, so did you consider selling the business itself at some point? And he goes, well, no, I mean, I just cut lawns. And I was like, yeah, but you've had recurring customers sometimes for up to 10 years. All of that has a value to somebody. Somebody could have purchased your lawn care business. And granted, maybe you're not going to then go and you're not going to buy a jet, but at the same time, you had something valuable. So let's talk through that and help you understand how to do that. There's also a tremendous amount of tax advantage to run a lot of personal expenses through your business. When you go to sell a business, that's not advantageous. And so you want really 3 years of clean taxes and clean operating revenue to then be able to show it to someone who wants to buy your company, because then they have a better time understanding what the actual value of the company is versus trying to discount everything based on all of these hidden things that were run to the company. Hidden sounds bad, but it's typically not super evident during basic diligence when someone considers an enterprise.
That's great advice.
Patrick, our last question for you here is, where do you see Owners in Honor going in the next 5 to 10 years? And what is the impact you want it to have on America?
I'll start out with the basic principle. I'll start big. So big is that American democracy is really based on distributed ownership of both property and business, means of production. And so as we go through this large succession period, the likelihood is that there's going to be significant aggregation of industry. And so when that happens, two political movements typically come out of it or arise out of it. One is oligarchy, which is very few people who are quite wealthy own most of the means of production. And then the other one, in response to the oligarchy movement, is typically socialism. So it's to say the people need to own it, i.e. the government needs to own it because the government's going to be fair. The United States has gone through that a couple different times in its history. The 20s and the 30s are probably the biggest, with most of the antitrust laws coming out of that period. And right now, the opportunity is that you have an incredible number of veterans who are really well suited to be able to take over these businesses as they're succeeding and to really be sort of the vanguard for the rest of the country, to be able to assume a little bit more risk because they're a little bit more risk tolerant. Typically veterans are than your average person. And then they also come with a community. Like veterans don't do things alone. Like it's the whole army of one thing while a marketing campaign does not exist. Like none of us are ever really by ourselves. We're always in the smallest unit in the United States military is 2. And so the ability for us to be able to then educate as many veterans as possible and military families to, one, help them transfer their business optimally to make sure that at least the veteran businesses aren't part of that 80% of businesses that are going to close forever. And then the second part is to really start educating veterans of all levels, not just ones that have MBAs, but ones that maybe just have an associate's degree, but have the credibility and capability to be able to surround themselves with capable people to then be able to run one of these businesses. And so a couple of big partnerships that are coming up. One is with the Small Business Administration. So we're going to be working with a different entity to be able to educate more veterans through the Veteran Business Outreach Centers. And the Veteran Business Outreach Centers are connected to the Transition Assistance Program. So to be able to educate as many veterans as possible that are exiting the military, and then for us to really continue to do our roadshow at universities, and then to do things like this, whether it's the podcasts or webinars, to really get the word out as much as possible. We are not, as one entity, going to be able to solve this by ourselves. It really is going to take the entire veteran entrepreneur ecosystem to really come in together. And that's tough because it's been fractured for a really long time. And there's a lot of people who want to be sort of preeminent in that process. And we really need to set our egos aside as much as possible, very much like we did in service, to be able to say, even if it's someone else's idea, it's still a good idea. So let's try to surround ourselves about it because it's going to matter for America. Because it's going to matter in who gets a voice, like how democracy is leveled in America. And it's probably in our lifetimes going to be one of the most important fights that we can have. And a great way for someone who chose service to their country to be able to pivot it somewhat, still serve their country theoretically, but then really see that service directly in their community and really see that impact with being able to create family wealth, being able to give to whether it's your church or your school or your athletic leagues or whatever, to be able to then distribute more of your wealth in a way that you see fit. Vice working at a W-2 job, which is also an incredible way to be able to feed your family. But I think there's a lot more veterans that currently exist in the entrepreneur space that are very well suited to it, that are just lacking the awareness of how to do it. And what we want to be able to do is to connect the dots and help them.
Yeah. And that's why we're so excited to partner with Owners in Honor, is because one of our core tenets is how do we help amplify the messages and the journeys of those military members who now are in business ownership and tell the stories of how they are helping their neighborhoods and their communities to really build back up America. And at the end of the day, we all served our country to serve a purpose bigger than ourselves. Now service has just transitioned into serving our country in a different way through business ownership. Patrick, thank you so much for coming on for the third time on DogTags Ownership. We're super excited to, again, partner with Owners in Honor with our podcast to really help amplify the message of the veteran entrepreneurs that you all are helping turn their dog tags into ownership. So thank you, Patrick.
Keep telling the stories, because that's what, at the end of the day, it's all just stories. And so that helps people, I think, make the connection and makes it personal.
I hope you enjoyed that interview with Patrick Flood from Owners in Honor.
And before we close out August, we want to recognize our Forces Brands USA Business of the Month. This month, we're doing something a little different because we're highlighting an organization that both DogTags Ownership and Forces Brands USA are proud to support, Owners in Honor.
Owners in Honor is a nonprofit working to help members of our military community pursue entrepreneurship through acquisition. And that mission couldn't align more closely with what we're trying to build.
Because when a veteran acquires a business, we're not just talking about buying a company. We're talking about preserving businesses, protecting jobs, creating economic opportunity, building wealth, strengthening communities, and ultimately giving veterans another mission after military service. That's why organizations doing this work deserve more than a shout out. They deserve our support.
And that's what Forces Brands USA is all about. Helping Americans discover the businesses, organizations, products, services, and resources connected to this incredible military community. And we do that through the hashtag #ReplaceOneChallenge. So we challenge each of you to replace one product, one service, or one podcast with someone who stood up, raised their right hand to serve this country.
August reminded us that entrepreneurship doesn't have one look. Malyri Ryan showed us the power of authenticity and personal brand. Tom Schwab showed us the power of patience, conversations, and getting your message in front of the right audience. Jerry and Tracy Flanagan showed us what can happen when veteran entrepreneurship becomes a platform for creating opportunities for other veterans. And Patrick Flood and Owners in Honor reminded us that sometimes you don't have to build the next great business. Sometimes the next great business is already there, and it just needs its next owner.
That's why we keep doing this. One conversation, one connection, one opportunity at a time.
The uniform may come off,
but the mission doesn't end.
And neither does your ability to lead. So whether you're starting a business, buying one, growing one, or you're still trying to figure out what comes next, keep moving forward, keep building your network, and remember, your network equals your net worth.
And you don't have to build alone. We'll see you next week for another episode of Dog Tags to Ownership. And until then, keep pushing to turn your dog tags into ownership.
From dog tags to ownership, heroes take the lead. Stories of veterans building dreams with passion, drive, and speed. From service to success, we're here to inspire the quest. Dog tags to ownership, we're the best. Take the pride.